Questions went away, took 4 months, and we got this done. I'm a storyteller. You'll see that. There is no way I would have been able to write a book. I'm glad to get where we are. I've sold 170 copies in the first 3 days. Hey, how about that? I'm on my way to Sarah Palin's record, I think, something like that. And then the other thing is way more important than the book. This was rivalry week in college basketball. And I'm a Hoosier, and the whole JV game that happened between Missouri and Kansas was interesting, but the Purdue-Indiana game was way more important, and Indiana kicked their ass at Purdue by 17. I was so happy I didn't sleep for 2 days. It was sweet. College basketball is your life. High school, college basketball, when you grow up in Indiana, you'll see this. Okay, you're already understanding I'm a PG-13 cusser. If you can't handle that, you need to either leave or stay and tell your parents so I get a phone call from the school board. I don't care. You need to understand this, okay? So, big week. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background. I think I have 20 slides total. I don't know if this is going to take 30 minutes or 40 or 20. I'm a storyteller. I have no idea what I'm going to say. This thing will be my guidepost, but other than that, we'll see. We're going to have at it. I've had an interesting life, and I love to be able to share it and talk about it. The first thing I do want you to know is all the proceeds from my book and any speaking gigs that I get, and I've now booked 5 speaking gigs around the country for the next couple months, and my goal from this is to do this speech around the country, and all the proceeds are going to go to brain cancer research. Head for the Cure, yay, how about that? Unfortunately, my wife is affected by that. She has a malignant brain tumor, and so I get the opportunity to try to raise money for a local organization. I'm on the board for it. It's called Head for the Cure, and I love it. I'm passionate about it. It's something that I love to do, to be able to speak about leadership and to be able to give back. So here we go. All right, this is the book, Get Real Leadership. I have 2 slides that talk about me a little bit, that'll give you a frame of reference and I would say give you some context for where I've come from and why I've developed the thoughts I have about leadership, okay? It's always a little disconcerting to see your entire life ground down to about 8 logos, isn't it? This is me. I grew up in a farming town in southern Indiana. I went to Vanderbilt University. I was an East Asian history major. How about that? You're like, whoa, how about that dude, huh? Liberal arts, I have no freaking idea why I did that, but it doesn't matter, I did. Because I had no idea what I was going to do after that, I went straight through to Indiana University and got my MBA. And so my context for that was completely no business experience. This facility, I live a couple miles away from here, is phenomenal. The fact that you all are here is a testament to the people in this area and the support that they give, and the fact that you specifically are here says you care, and I love that. I didn't have any kind of thing, any kind of opportunity to do something like this in a farming community. We gave the SAT in a phone booth in my you don't even know what a phone booth is. Damn, I got to update these jokes. I think out of 100 kids in my class, I think 10 of them went to college. They were farmers. Different world. I love it. After Indiana University, I've worked in several big companies and some small ones. I was hired by Procter & Gamble to do marketing. That's where I grew up, 7 years there. The cool thing about it is, working at Procter & Gamble, I was able to have 2.5 years where they asked me to move to Fayetteville, Arkansas, and I was one of the founding members of the Walmart Procter & Gamble customer team. And as a result of that, in 1989 to 91, I got to shadow Sam Walton for about 1.5 years. It was an experience of a lifetime. Unbelievable being around him and seeing how he operated, and it changed everything for me. And I'm going to talk about the context of what I think about leadership as a result of my time with Sam Walton. But I spent 7 years with P&G. I worked in brand management or marketing, which is a great business there. It really has to do with advertising and marketing and running brands. I worked on Crest, Pepto-Bismol, and Metamucil. I was working down the body. Let me tell you, you have never lived until you've been the brand manager of Metamucil. That was a job I had in 1991. It was the peak of corporate life, to sit in a focus group behind a one-way mirror and listen to 12 women talk about their bowel habits for 3 hours, okay? I want you to think about this. You got a moderator in there and you're trying to figure out what your business is. It's a $160 million business with $40 million of profit. You can't act like you don't care. Let me tell you, telecom, when I came to Sprint, never looked so good after that experience. You have not lived till you've been to those focus groups. I came to Sprint in 1992, so I've been in Kansas City about 20 years. I worked for 5 years at Sprint and then quit. Owned my own small business sports marketing firm called MAI. We happened to be the business of the year in the Kansas City metro area out of 64,000 businesses in 1998. We were the Mr. K Award winner. The Kansas City Chamber of Commerce named us the #1 business of the year, and we won that. I was in sports marketing and I loved it. Then, crazy me, I sold my half of that business and then became the CEO of an internet startup. I don't know why you do some of these things. You would like, in retrospect, to say there was something critically important about doing that, or you were logical, but at the end of the day, the internet was exploding. I thought I would make $1 trillion by becoming the CEO of an internet startup, so I quit and did it. The company UClick was a fascinating one. What we did was we represented branded content in the digital world. So Doonesbury, Garfield, Dear Abby, that kind of content, when it's in a newspaper, the newspaper pays someone and then the artist gets money on a flow-through. We did the same thing online. So if you ran a website and you wanted Dear Abby on your website, you had to pay me, and then I paid the Dear Abby folks. So that's what we did. It was cool. I got to know these folks. It was really interesting to understand the business. And by the way, creators are a pain in the ass. They don't care about business. What they care about is drawing that damned orange cat or writing advice. They don't think about business. They don't think about what's going on. But at the end of the day, they were dear folks, and I loved getting to know them. So 2 huge businesses, Fortune 300, followed by 2 small businesses where when something broke, I had to fix it. We had to figure out how to make payroll. It was the best, that middle line there was the best 3.5, 4 years experience I've ever had, because it smacks you into submission to say, okay, there's no corporate plane, there's no assistant, there's no secretary. If something needs to be done, you do it yourself, and it was a fascinating experience. After the internet blew up in 2001, and we didn't get enough funding on UClick, I actually went back to Sprint. That was weird to go back. Completely different company, but I went back, and I was blessed to be able to get a division to head, and I was able over the next 6 or 8 years to be the division president with roughly 3,000 or 4,000 people in my group most of the time, and a P&L responsibility of $3 billion. And it was really cool trying to figure out how to put previous experience in big companies combined with companies of 10 and 12 people and try to figure out how I'm going to operate that and be successful within the new world I was in. Then in 2009, Embark was sold. I was the president of the consumer markets at Embark. I was the number 2 or 3 guy of a Fortune 400 company. I loved my job. Life was good. We sold ourselves to a company 1/3 our size in Monroe, Louisiana. 2 things. First of all, when you're sold, you are synergy, and if you don't know what that means you are extra cost your history. That was me. And I wouldn't have wanted to move to Monroe, Louisiana anyway. This is my home here. So, all of a sudden, 2.5 years ago, I got a golden parachute, and now I do breakfast and lunch for a living. And I am freaking good at it, too. Now, I have a junior at Blue Valley North, I have a freshman at Scion, and I have a late life baby. He's 3.5, so I get to hang with my 3.5-year-old a lot. So I know all the animated movie characters, and I know where the best playlands are with regard to the McDonald's. And I get to hang, and I connect people. I love to learn, so I go and have breakfast and lunch. I have 8 breakfasts and lunches this week with different people, just talking to them about their business for no reason. I literally have no reason to do it other than I love to connect and learn. And that's what I do right now. And I'm very blessed. I want to write more books. I want to speak more. I just bought a company. I don't run it. I have some people do that. But at the end of the day, what I want to do is be able to share my thoughts on leadership with folks. And I'm very blessed. I just turned 50 this summer, and to be able to have that freedom is very cool. So this is my context. This is the first thing I want you to understand, that I wrote it down 10 years ago. And I want you to understand, everybody in this room has one of these sheets. You just may have it in your head. And I want you to start gathering this. And the answer may be you have 4 people right now, but you will have and do have people that mentor and influence you starting immediately. It happens. Write it down. This is a crazy list, by the way. My pastor's up there. I love the church I'm in. My wife gets the heart. There's 2 people up there that I think are absolutely horrible at their job, and let me tell you, you learn from them too, and I'm not going to tell you which 2. Okay? Some of these people I've never met, but I've observed. I've had Pat Summitt on this chart for about 8 years. She's the head women's basketball coach at the University of Tennessee. She has 8 national championships. She's unbelievable. Now, even more so, she's unbelievable. She was just diagnosed with Alzheimer's and dementia, and she continues to coach, and her assistants around her are helping her with her disease, because if she stays engaged, she believes the disease will take her more slowly. If you look at this, I'm a big Bobby Knight fan. I was in the chair when I was in the gym when he threw the chair. February 23rd, 1985. You all were 10 years away from being born. He threw the chair, and he had every right to. Those bastards from Purdue. We hate those guys. It was against Purdue. We hate them. It was a bad call. Throw the chair is what I say. I was at that game, and they have it on ESPN Classic every year on February 23rd. And the 3 guys I was with were texting each other saying, "Oh, this is sweet. Here it comes." Bobby Knight is my hero. Don't mess with Bobby Knight. Now, I married somebody from Duke. She's a Duke grad. I hate those bastards. And I got to have Coach K up here because, by the way, Coach K is an incredible leader. He has taken a lot, but he was the point guard for Bobby Knight, and he was an assistant coach for Bobby Knight. And what he's done is he's taken a lot of the good traits from Coach Knight, and he doesn't act like such a meanie in public. He's an amazing leader. I can't spell it, so I just call it Coach K. Madeleine Albright is on here. We hired her to give a speech to 1,000 people once. She was very expensive. She came in. She's about this tall. She was the Secretary of State for quite a while. She's from Eastern Europe. She's an amazing success story. She's the best speaker I've ever heard. I had no idea. She was hilarious, talking about the leader of North Korea and the kooky guy, and talking about her State Department and the people around the world she knew and the lessons she had. She had to stand on a podium. She's so small. She had 1,000 people standing, yelling, screaming, crying, laughing. It was amazing. I looked at that and I said, wow, how are you so good? So I put her on the list. I don't know what your list is. It doesn't matter to me, but I would encourage you to start writing it down. Write it in the margins of something and keep it and add to it. You run into somebody that you want to think of as a potential mentor and influencer, and I will implore upon you, think of the bad ones too. I've had 24 bosses, 26 years of work, 24 bosses. 2 of them sucked. I learned more from those 2 than I can possibly imagine. And the first one, the reason why he was bad is because he was not qualified to be in the job he was in, but it happens, folks. And it was horrible. He had no juice. You'd sit in the room and you'd watch him operate with his peers and no one cared. And you said, wow, this is my boss. That means I'm in trouble if this doesn't work. I need to get a different job. The second bad boss I had, it was a she. Her problem was she had no clue how to relate to people. You didn't know on any particular day whether you were going to be a hero or a goat. And that inconsistency made the whole org be on edge. You'd be flinching like you're going to walk in and you don't know whether she's going to tell you you're great or she would throw something at you or smack you. And let me tell you, when that happens, you know what the organization does? They say, you know what, it's not worth it. Even if it's a 4-to-1 ratio of good to bad, I'm not going in to see her because it ain't worth it because the bad is so bad. You learn from everybody you operate with, you see, you're around. These people mentor and influence you. My father-in-law's up here. My cross-country coach at Vanderbilt's up here. I've got people that I have seen operate, and I love it. What is your list? Who's on your list? Keep building your list, I implore upon you. So that's my background. Here's what I say. 15 years ago, I was the recruiter, and I went to Duke, and I was the recruiter for Sprint. Ironically, I ended up marrying a Duke grad. And they would give me a binder before I went down there to interview at Duke, and they would say, here's the questions you need to ask, and I would take that and throw it in the trash. And I would say, I don't think so. I want to find leaders. And I had to figure out what my answer was about what that looks like, not just leaders. Leaders could be defined as someone that's in charge of an organization. I don't think of it that way. I think of leaders that have influence and impact. So you can be a leader even if nobody works for you and nobody's in an org, you're not elected, I don't care. Doesn't matter. And I had to figure out a construct for being able to interview people and hire them and get them in the group and in the company, or to figure out who I wanted to be around. So this is the way I looked at it. I think in order to win and to maximize your influence, you need to get real in 3 areas. You need to think about leading in all 3 of these areas. Yourself, that's the foundation for everything. I'm going to talk about that. Your people. And by the way, your people doesn't necessarily mean people that work for you. They can be people that are peers of yours. They can be in a study group. They can be in the National Honor Society. They can be in the cross-country team. I don't care what it is. There are people that are around you. In the business world, it tends to be defined more as people in your org. Nah, it's way beyond that. And your business. Think of that as your group. I think of it in the construct of the business you're in. How are you impacting it? What are you doing? You're leading, okay? Tell me what you're going to do. I'm going to take you through maybe 2 slides on each of these and talk to you about what the stories I have and what these mean to me and how I think you can get real. I will tell you, being authentic and real as a leader in order to maximize influence is huge. So here's the first one, leading yourself, and I'm going to talk about it in the construct of a personal brand. I made this up 15 years ago. I was working at Procter & Gamble, and I realized that at Procter & Gamble, the term brand, which I didn't know till I showed up there, is critically important. And you all know this. I'm a huge Southwest Airlines fan. I have a credit card from them. We fly there all the time. Kansas City is a great place to be a fan of Southwest because there's so many flights direct. You know, I love their brand. Whether you consider them joyful or whether you consider them punctual, whatever their brand is to you, to me, it's all those things and it's good. I want you to understand that you have a brand. I want to tell you a quick story. There was a friend of mine that was running the Scope business. I was working on Crest. He was on Scope next to me, and he realized they had excess capacity in their plants. And so they could take some of the excess capacity from Scope, the green water with alcohol that came off of it, sell it to somebody that's in the private label business and make a whole bunch of money. And Scope was a strong enough brand to be able to compete with those folks. He took that recommendation forward to a senior executive at Procter & Gamble and recommended it. And that executive looked at him, and you never forget this. You never forget these words. The dude looked at him and said, "Son, we don't make mouthwash. We make Scope. If you ever come into my office again and talk to me about selling this stuff and getting in the mouthwash business, I am going to kick your ass." I said, okay, hello? That's because Scope is Scope. It has brand attributes. I want you to think about that. Diet Coke, Volvo, Southwest Airlines, Costco, Starbucks is different than Dunkin' Donuts, right? Not just the experience, the brand. You have a brand. I'm going to implore upon you to figure out your mentors and influencers. I'm going to implore upon you to figure out what your brand is. I define this very simply as you have 7 words that describe you. You can choose it as 3, 5, 7, 9. I'm speaking, I say 7. I don't give a damn whether you like it or not. Here's the scoop. Figure out your 7. The crazy thing is, you have to find it anonymously. Because if you ask people what you're 7, they're going to pat you on the head and say you have a good smile and you're smart and all this stuff. And it's like blah, 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 blah. You got to figure it out anonymously. You got to find a friend that can ask 5 people that know you well, get 7 words from each. They have 35 words and they send them to you so that you don't know the source of the words. People will give you excellent feedback anonymously. What are your 7 words? If you're going to be a leader, you got to figure out what your brand is. Not just figure it out, you got to figure out what the world thinks of your brand. And by the way, here's my 7, so you know. I've done this 6 or 8 times in the last 10 or 12 years. I put them up here with pictures because it helps me remember them. But these are my 7. There's 11 words that people use to describe me. These are the only 7 I'm willing to put into public. Okay, so this is them. I'm going to start on the bottom right. I'm positive. Let me tell you, when you're the brand manager of Metamucil, you better freaking be positive. I was one positive SOB, all right? I'm optimistic. I'm a Cubs fan. We won the World Series in 1908. Every year's the year. Here we go. By the way, in 06, 07, and 08, the Cubs dominated baseball. Just in case you wondered. That was pre-World War I. We dominated. I am optimistic. I'm team-oriented. The reason why I put Indiana up here is, I don't know if you know this, Indiana does not put the names of the players on the backs of their jerseys. You do not play for yourself. We do not care. It is about the team. And I'm team-oriented. I love to be affiliated with the folks that work with me, and I love to understand them, know them. and figure out how we're going to win together. So that's one of my words that the world would give me. I'm curious. I ask why. I'm an East Asian history major. I'm not sure what that symbol is. I hope it's not a bad word. But I use it up here to indicate that I'm curious. We go into a restaurant, and I'm asking how many cooks they got and why they do the wait step this way. My family says, oh, for God's sakes, could you just order? We're not trying to buy the restaurant. But if you're curious, it's interesting. Why? What's going on? My fifth word is mischievous. That's on target for me. I use humor to handle stressful situations. That's what I do. I was dealing with the board of directors at Embark and at Sprint. They happen to be CEOs from across the country, and I'm just as liable to say, did you really wear that tie with that shirt? And my peers would be horrified. They didn't know if they were going to get fired or in trouble. It's what I do. I'm not saying it's good or bad, it's what I do. I have a 3-year-old now, and he's got a sense of humor and he messes with you. Think about that. You kind of get what you give, right? That happens. That's my brand. I'm impatient. I grew up in a town of 2,000 with 1 stoplight, 3 people's a line. I do not wait in lines. Ever. I will go to the next place. It doesn't matter. I just can't handle it. That's a crazy one, and it's bad, but I am impatient. I also time myself to work every day. I don't work now, and I go to different places, but when I went to Sprint or Embark, every day I would set my watch and time myself. I could go 5 miles over to the speed limit, and I could go any way I wanted, and I would try to figure it out, and 8 minutes and 51 seconds was my record. And if I ever broke my record, I would get out and spike my briefcase. Boom! It's going to be a great day. I love this stuff. I say compete. 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 Life is not spring training, folks. This is real stuff. I tell my kids, stop this messing around. I still, 2.5 years later, have hundreds of people on Facebook that are friends with me because I worked with them at Embark in call centers around the country, and they send a note every once in a while and say, what's your fastest time to work? That's a brand. That's part of my brand. The final one is tenacious. I am one tenacious SOB. I hate to lose. I hate it. 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 I wanted so badly to be a professional athlete. I wanted to play one of those sports, and by the time I was 6, it was clear that was not going to happen. Okay? It was obvious. So what did I do? I became a long-distance runner. I wasn't great, but I was tenacious, and it's really interesting how it is a sport that you can beat people in if you are tenacious. And by the way, crazy situation, I set the school record at Vanderbilt for 10,000 meters in the spring of 1982, and it still stands. I hate to lose. I wasn't as good as a couple people on the team. There's been at least 50 people since then that were better than me, but when it came right down to it, we had the big meet. I kicked ass, and I love the idea of saying, this thing still stands. There's nothing big about it. I wasn't even a scholarship athlete. I hate to lose. Hate to lose. I think I hate to lose more than I love to win. That's a crazy thought, but it is. These are my 7. What are your 7? And by the way, the reason I choose 7 is very simple. The first 3 or 4 words that someone gives you are easy. They'll get them right off the bat. It's 5, 6, and 7 they'll struggle with, and they'll look at you and they'll think, what do I really want to tell the dude? Is it really true? Who are you? What are you? The interesting thing about it is what you think of yourself is critically important, but more importantly, what you need to do is understand what the world thinks of you and the gap between the two. I will tell you the gap is more important than anything. If you think of yourself as a visionary or a leader or some sort of thing like that, and the organization thinks you're a micromanaging ninny, and you don't know that, you're going to have problems maximizing your influence. You need to understand your brand, and by the way, if you don't like it, either suck it up and deal with it, or change it. And you can't fake it. If you really aren't a caring person, you're a hard driver and you kind of trample people on the way through, and you still try to act nice and do all these different things, let me tell you, the world figures these things out. What you need to do is figure out what your 7 words are, anonymously, figure out what the world thinks, and try to match those up. I desperately did not want impatient on my list. Desperately, desperately, desperately. I thought I was driven and all these things. Every time I've done this and asked for anonymous feedback, impatient has been the first trait on the list for me. So I tried to find out who said it so I could kick their ass. Just kidding, it's anonymous. But at the end of the day, what's your 7? It's kind of freaky. You're starting to think about this. A couple of people are trying to figure out whether they're going to the ball game tonight, and other people are starting to write down words saying, what would people say? Or, what's your best friend? What would they say? And by the way, another thing that's interesting about it is you need to figure out whether at home and at school, and eventually at home and at work, whether you want to have the same brand. I know a number of people that don't. I just operate the same way. I'll tell you why. It's exhausting to try to figure it out differently. If you really want to do a different persona and be different, not faking it, but truly different at home and at work, it's exhausting. And also now, what's happening, the lines between the two are blurred. I got my smartphone. I get the question, how many hours did you work? I don't know. I have my phone on from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. taking phone calls and emails. Is that working? I'm not in the office. I don't know. So I choose to make my brand the same in all those places. Not sure if you do. I don't care. Thinking about this, paying attention to it, and understanding with regard to your influence on others around you is absolutely critical. And you'll actually find out some interesting things when you do this test of 7. And you might, one person might give you one word that you don't like, and you'll focus on that. You're like, oh no, that's not me. You know, the fact is, if they actually thought about it, they know you well, and they put that word on you, it may not be a core brand attribute of yours, but somebody thinks that. It's fascinating. The other thing I would do is you have to figure out what your brand is, and then you need to share it. This is what I say. I would get up in front of folks, you know what? 3,000 people in my organization, I'd say, here's my 7 words. You saw those 7 words, I would get up in people and say, this is me. For better or for worse, some of it's good, some of it's bad, doesn't matter, that's me. People are going to try to figure you out anyway. I'm not talking about your best friends, they already know you. I'm talking about people you meet. You go to school. You're going to go to college. We got juniors and seniors here, I assume, mainly. You're going to go to college, and all of a sudden, you're going to have a clean slate. What does that look like? And you don't have to have a presentation that does it, but think about what it means to share the transparency of what your brand is. They're going to try to figure it out anyway. What you're doing is truncating the process so they can do that. If you're a leader of an organization, I would argue just stand up and do it, because they're going to try to figure it out. Because you matter. If you're an elected official, or if you're an organization at a business with a boss, the boss is doing your personnel review, you better try to figure out what the boss likes. And if the boss hates green M&Ms, my suggestion is you figure that out and you don't give the damn dude green M&Ms. That's being facetious, but for example, if bosses love voicemail versus email or vice versa, figure it out. You gotta do these things. Transparency, share it. I have this picture down here of the way this works, and I love talking about this because one of the most important things you can do is to have more interaction with more people that are around you. I would argue that that's one of the most important things you can do in order to be as effective as possible, particularly if you have a group working for you. This hierarchical stuff from 20 and 30 years ago is crazy. It doesn't work at all. One of the things that I did was I consider work-life balance. I don't really talk about it, but it's so important to me because my family is on such a different plane than anything I've ever done. And I committed, because I worked so close and my kids went to Overland Middle, which is right up here near Nick and Jake's. I went to elementary school to lunch with them once a month the entire time they were in elementary school. When they got to middle school, it was not cool. So I was able to deliver stuff to the office and then leave, and then they would come get it. You know, I've seen that program. But I went once a month in elementary school. And I would be there, and I worked for the CEO. Dan Hesse was my boss. He's the CEO of Sprint. He was my boss at the time. He might call me. Someone would call, and he'd say, "What's the noise in the background?" I'd say, "I'm eating corn dogs with 94 third graders." And usually there was silence, and I would say, "Would you like me to step out and take the call? You want me to call you later?" You know what? Inevitably, they would say, "You can call me back." You have to decide what you're going to do. Share that. And by the way, the org gets it when you do that, either through your actions or your words. Critically important to share this. The transparency that you have and how you want to operate is very important. On my 7 words, I don't put anything about my family. This is really my business. This is more of my brand and my persona and how I operate at home and at work. But the idea of putting my family in terms of my brand on par with being tenacious and optimistic just didn't make any sense, so I don't. If you ask people, some of them will put things about their family on there. I don't have any problem with that. This is my choice not to. So we're talking about transparency and sharing what you do and how you do it. The other thing I say is use it. So you've got a brand. You've got to figure out what your brand is. You've shared it. You've talked about it. Here's what I say. In the top left, use it for accountability. One of the things I love to do is blurt crap out. Because if you say something, it's amazing. If you say it in front of your organization, if you're the boss, or you're the leader, and all of a sudden you say, this is what we're going to do, it holds you accountable. It almost is like publicly saying, I'm going to lose 20 pounds by Christmas. You know what? You may not have to, but the accountability that you have to have, if you say that in front of folks, is amazing. Because then you're holding yourself accountable. So I love it. I say accountability. Use your brand to tell people what you're going to be. And if you tell them you're optimistic and you end up being a hangdog pessimist all the time, someone will look at you and say, hey, dude, that ain't what you said. Either change it or change your behavior. The one on the right is one of my favorite theories of life, which is life is won and lost on little decisions at the margin. Probably nobody in here is going to play in the NBA. And my prediction is nobody's going to win the lottery, the big lottery. I mean, if you win $500, congratulations. I'm talking about the $250 million Powerball. So you should have a plan. If that's your plan, good luck. And here's what I say. Your decisions you make every day in little ways, cumulatively, have to do with what your success is. You're not going to have a silver bullet. And what you can do is you can take your brand and figure out how you can make right decisions and you can be cumulatively successful. I'm going to use a baseball analogy here. Once again, sports. 162-game season for baseball. Every team ever in the history of baseball has won 40 and lost 40. Even the bad teams wake up and win 8-0 sometimes. It just happens. And the good teams lose. That's 80 games. The other 82 games are amazing. Amazing, amazing. And if you follow baseball, it's like life. Little things happen. They block the ball in the dirt in the 5th inning with a man on third and 2 outs. The run doesn't score, and they end up winning a game by 1 run. They make the right decision to pinch hit. They hit the cutoff man. They turn the double play. Little teeny things, and then at the end of the game, they win by 1. And the other team that lost is sitting there going, darn, you know what? We were better than them, but darn it, they beat us by 1. And then it happens day after day and week after week. Good teams, of those 82 games, they win 62 and lose 20. They win the World Series. They get a ticker tape parade. And they make a lot of money. And the bad teams, this much difference between them. They win 20 of those 82. They lose 62. And they all get fired. They get traded. It's horrible. The difference between those two teams is usually infinitesimal. It has to do with little things. I contend that that's what your life is. It's those little decisions. It's not the huge ones. You're going to have 6 or 8 really big decisions. Where am I going to college? Have to do with maybe buying a house or getting married or having kids. But I'm talking about during the day, you may have 20 decisions you make. It's the cumulative effect of those decisions that help you win at the margin. And then the final thing is the right people. Here's what I did. The last 10 years I worked at Embark and Sprint, I didn't hire anybody from the outside. I had the benefit of working at a very large company, so there was a great pool of people. Here's what I did. I wanted to be surrounded by the right people. Jim Collins in the book Good to Great would say, get the right people on the bus in the right seats and you're set. I believed it wholeheartedly, so what I would say is I narrowed it down, and I had Bill and Susan were the final 2 candidates for my job. I found 5 people in the company that knew them individually. I waited till 8 o'clock at night and I left a voicemail, and here's what I said. I'm thinking of hiring Bill to be my vice president of alternate channels. Here's the job. I want you to reply to this voicemail and give me 7 words that describe Bill. And I always had to say, by the way, I want 7 words. I don't want a phone call back. I don't want sentences. I don't want an email. I want 7 freaking words. Take your time, reply to the voicemail, and give me 7. So 5 people are giving me 7 words. I know a lot about Bill after I figured that out, and Susan, because I do the same thing. And that's how I chose the people I would get. You know what? I don't know whether other people do it that formally or informally, but at the end of the day, if you're looking to get something, and that means get into a school or get into an organization or lead a group, people are going to figure out who you are and how you are. And the grassroots word on you is probably more important than anything else. The reason I stopped hiring people outside is because I would have a big job open and we'd fly somebody in from Seattle and she'd sit across from me and he'd sit across from me, and they looked great. They looked good, smelled good, sounded good. They knew what the hell to say. I was thinking, wow. This is impressive. I had an internal candidate over here that I'd worked with for 5 years, and I knew the strengths and weaknesses, and I loved them. But this lady that came from Seattle, she was impressive, and I hired a couple of those people. And you know what? After a month, I realized they're human. They're no different than anybody else. So I wanted to find out people that I knew in depth, who they were and how they were and what their brand was. So that's what I did. So get the right people, and that's critical. So here's the questions I would pose to you. Do you know your 7? What do other people think of you? And more importantly, what's the gap? The gap is more important, and you may think more poorly of yourself than others do, or vice versa. It doesn't matter. You have to put some thought into this, because your brand will translate to your success. All right, we've talked about yourself, and the foundation of leadership and Get Real Leadership to me is very simply yourself, and learning your brand and figuring that out so you can be authentic. Now I'm going to talk about your people. And once again, they don't have to work for you. I say you need to connect, communicate, and cover their butts. First of all, connect. My theory in life, it's in the book, is 98% of all the people in the United States, when given correct direction, treated well, and respected, will do a hell of a job for you. They will work hard, they will care, they will do what you need them to do. 2% of them are going to lie and cheat and try to be lazy. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, that's fine. It's going to happen. It's a 98-2 rule. Here's what I'd say. Do not worry about the 2. Measure them, find them, fire them. At the end of the day, you cannot put all your policies and procedures around the 2 to make sure the 2 don't cheat you. You know what you do to the 98 when you do that? You bound them up. Give them trust. Turn them loose. Tell them you trust them, you believe in them, and you're going to win with them. And you can win. And I am fundamentally sound on that. I stay with that all the time. And by the way, it doesn't always work. I start by saying when someone comes to work with me, you're going to be great at your job. If you prove otherwise, that's fine. But you're going to be great. We're going to go from here. I have had bosses that stared at me and said, all right, this is going to work. In the next 3 or 4 months, you're going to prove to me whether you're any good at your job. And then after that, we're in. And I thought, how exhausting is that? I don't even know what that looks like. I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't know what the criteria is. I don't like that. I believe the 98-2 rule is better. 98% of the people, when treated well, when respected, when listened to, and given good direction, they are all in. That's the optimist side of me. The right-hand side one reminds me of goal setting. I had one boss who said, you know what, we're going to set goals that are absolutely, positively impossible to make, because people will achieve more if we do that. And I understand that. I said, I don't agree. I said, we're going to have goals, and we're going to have stretch goals, but you have to be able to make them, because otherwise the organization gets it and they roll their eyes. You know, I don't know if anybody in here runs a 100-meter dash, but if someone says you got to run 9.5 seconds or 10 seconds, you look at them and you say, okay, that would be the fastest time in the history of a high schooler in the United States. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't care. That's your goal. Well, you might work against it, but at the end of the day, that's unrealistic. I say set goals. Crush them, celebrate, move on. You never get a chance to celebrate if you have goals that aren't at least possible to reach. They can be stretched, they can be hard. They shouldn't be easy. But I believe that you need to make sure that they're achievable. And the bottom left is, I say, turn them loose. One of the craziest things that ever happened in my work experience was I tell my org, do things I don't know about. And that's a beautiful thing to say when you have a large group. They're expecting you to want to control and be involved and make all the decisions. I would say, do things I don't know about. Well, I went to a call center in Johnson City, Tennessee. I have 200 employees there. They're in a call center taking customer service phone calls, sales and service. We walked in, and I stopped in my tracks, because the people that were taking the phone calls were IMing their friends and texting on their cell phones while they were talking to customers about billing issues. I had a fit. And my general manager of the call center said, listen, I did something that you didn't know about. Here's what I did. I have 2 teenagers at home, and they multitask all the time. She said, my daughter is 15. She does her homework while listening to music and having 4 IM chats up. She can multitask. She can do it damned well. I had a problem in this call center on turnover, because the people that showed up to work here were not making a lot of money, and they said they had to check their lives at the door because we didn't allow them to have any communication outside. They had to take the phone call, fix the problem, get off the call, fix the next problem. She said, it cost me $13,000 for every person that quit because I lose lost productivity. I have to put recruiting, hiring, and have to pay to get a headhunter to get a new person. $13,000, and these people hated working here. She said, what the hell? She just changed the policy and said, you can do whatever you want. You can text IM. You can do whatever you want. Personally, you can do these things while you're taking the phone calls. Well, when she was telling me this, my knees were getting, they were buckling. I tell you, I'm old school. At a certain point, this is crazy. So I watched, and I looked up the metrics, and the fact is this call center had way less turnover. People weren't quitting. Their sales and service metrics were higher. What was happening was people were loving it. And the greatest part about it was, I had no idea this would happen, is the self-fulfilling and self-policing of it. And people would say, you got to do your job if you're going to do all that. I got it. I love that. Because if the crowd says this is beautiful. I tell you, I couldn't go back. I never went back to that call center because it made me want to throw up when I walked in. I said, you can't be doing this. You're IMing about where you're what club you're going to tonight while you're talking on the phone with a customer you're fixing their problem, and I'm supposed to get a good customer service rating out of this. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But it worked because she did it well. So you turn them loose. Turn them loose. That's the 98.2 says, turn them loose. Be optimistic that they're going to do good things. They want to do good things if they're trusted and there's respect. It's amazing how that happens. Oh boy, that's interesting. The other thing is we also, I'm going to give the same information but a little twist on it. I love to hire and reward attitude, not just results. Results are obvious and they're important to reward for. But let me talk about attitude for a second. I want someone in my organization that walks down the hall in the building and people want to walk with her even if they don't know who she is. There are people that are surrounded by an aura of goodness and optimism. And there's also that person that walks around with a cloud above their head and they're kind of a pain in the ass. They may be your friend, that's okay, you walk with them, but at the end of the day, people aren't drawn to them. I want people with attitude that say, we're going to win this thing. I'm going to be optimistic. I love that. So I decided when we were on Metamucil and my team was embarrassed to be working on constipation. I mean, we were the kings of constipation, right? I said, okay, we're going to change this attitude around. So I created an award, and it was an attitude award. And once a month, I gave a shirt away to the person on the team with the best attitude. Not the best results, not that worked all night, the best attitude. And all of a sudden, the person that won it the previous month would wear it to the meeting the next month, and then the next month. And these shirts were worth $9. And this was old school. 20 years ago. So it was an iron-on decal that after the third washing it would crinkle up and look bad. We didn't have all this silk screening stuff, but still people wanted those shirts so bad because first of all, it was cool. No one else had them. And second of all, it said you had a great attitude. So I created the shirts. All of a sudden, instead of being embarrassed to be on Metamucil, they wanted to be on the business, and people around the company, this was a global company, they wanted the shirts. So here's the shirt that I created. This is the color of the shirt. It was salmon. I mean, it was god-awful. And if you notice, it's in his top hat, his name was Mr. Happy Bowel, okay? The first version said, it's tough being #1 in the #2 business, and I took that off. I said, you know what, at a certain point you got to draw the line. You got to stop with the jokes, all right? With friends like these, who needs enemas? I have the final shirt, but it's never been washed, so it's still hanging in there, and it's at my house. People wanted this stupid thing. It's crazy. It's worth $9, and they wore it to Procter & Gamble. When I came to Sprint, I decided that this attitude thing worked, so I kept it up, and I changed it a little bit. I didn't think the Sprint culture could handle Mr. Happy Bowel, even though Metamucil is fiber and Sprint's fiber-based. Never mind. So I changed it, and now I have one that I can take forever, and this is the new oh, I took it out. It's called Who's Your Hysteria. I've actually started numbering them too. I have no idea why, but 7 years ago I started numbering them. So they're Who's Your Hysteria, because that's the love of basketball for the state of Indiana, for all you head in the sand people that don't love basketball as much as I do. Have you seen the movie Hoosiers? That was my hometown, by the way, just in case you wondered. The shirts are valued. They're worth, I think, $11 now because they're silk screened, and they have numbers. I'm on 196. So there's 195 people wandering around, some in this city, around the country, and some of them put in their email signature. I actually got a resume randomly for a company that I was working with from someone, and on their resume it said, "Who's your Hysteria Award winner number 108?" I thought, this is beautiful. I gave the award away, and 5 years later, they're still talking about it. You know what? It gives you a chance on a resume to talk about why. It's interesting. Attitude. I have 3 kids. 2 of them got good ones. 1 of them doesn't. Makes me crazy. The one that doesn't. But you know what? You can be wound any sort of way, being positive or less positive. It happens. Ask yourself, what are you? Here, I talked about communicating now. This is the one that really relates to business. Blah, 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 blah. You get up and you're in a Q&A at a big company and someone asks a question, and then a minute and a half later the dude has given you an answer and didn't say squat and didn't answer the question. It just makes me nuts. They start talking about leveraging the synergy and doing all this stuff and using 3-syllable words. I love the answer to the question is no or yes, and then give a short answer that says, okay, here's the scoop. I'd say that's how you communicate. The other thing I love to do, and I think you should think about this, is the communication and the transparency between organizations. I told my folks every time, email me or call me without copying your boss. I know you all don't understand how radical that is. In a hierarchical organization, to be able to send an email to the president without letting your boss know you were doing it is freaky. I had to tell them 6 times publicly before anybody would even do it because it's so scary to them. And it started happening, and I would get cool ideas. Sometimes I would get complaints, and it was amazing. Over the 4 years that I put that into place, I only got 1 email that was stupid. And my organization and my VPs said, I don't think you should do this. You're going to get waste of time emails. I said, I don't think so. I think people are going to be smart. They're going to be respectful. But if they don't, that's our problem. One time I got an email that said the person, it was from Medford, Oregon call center. The person sent me an email and said, the guy next to me in the cube is chewing his gum too loud. What are you going to do about it? I said, wow. My team told me that I should send him a note back that said, you're wasting my time. Why would you ever ask that question? I said, no, 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 stop. If you ask people and implore upon them to send notes to you, you better damn well handle it well. What I did was I looked up the policy. It said as long as you're not on the phone with the customer, you can chew all the gum you want. So I sent her a note back, told her what our policy was, and said earphones or a request to move would be just fine, thank you, because this is a scoop. She was kind of stunned that I even answered the question. You know what? If you're going to be real with people and you're going to be transparent, you've got to figure out how you're going to walk that walk, and it doesn't matter what the questions are. A lot of times I would get something that was complaining about a boss. You got to handle that really well. First thing you do when you get an email from someone that complains about their boss is you say, first of all, I'll look into this. Can I use your name or you want to be anonymous? It was about half and half. And I would look into it to try to figure out if that boss really was having issues on how they manage people. But you can think about what it would be like to work in an organization that someone does that like me. If you don't treat your people well, they have an avenue to be able to talk to other folks, and it's amazing how that's self-healing and it works really well. So I would say get real communication. Get real. Get authentic. Use right words. Communicate. Answer the question. Answer the question if asked. And also let people have the avenue. And you know, the world is full of people that say they have an open door. The door's open, and in a business world, you start to walk in and they look at you and go, I'm busy, could you come back? But the door's open. The next time you come in, oh, God, sorry, can't talk to you now, but the door's still open. Come on. That's ridiculous. Doesn't make any sense at all. So here's what I would say. The final one in this is cover their butts. If you're going to be a leader, once again, doesn't matter whether people work for you, whether you're in a club or not, if you're going to be a leader, you're going to have to cover people's butts. It happens. They make mistakes. You look at this, it just happens. The one on the left stands for keeping your boss out of the way. I've had 2 bosses that it took me a lot of effort and energy to keep them away from my people. You can't have bosses that throw things and you spin them, overspin them downhill. All that does is make the organization crazy and it doesn't work. You absolutely, positively have to figure out how to keep bad work away from your folks, shield them, and do that. And then the other one on the right here is show well. If you're really going to be a leader and you're in a study group and you're chosen by your group to present to a class, you better show well. It's your job. If you don't, shame on you. If I'm standing in front of Wall Street analysts and talking about Embark or Sprint, and they have their laptops open and they have the ability to sell and buy the stock while I'm talking, let me tell you, it's my job to put the mischievous side away, to figure out what my points are, to communicate, to answer the questions, to do my job damn well. You got to show well. That's what you got to do. You got to cover their butts. And when they make mistakes, you know what? It happens. How you react to mistakes will be absolutely critical with regard to people and what they think. Your business, this is the final one. How you operate with your business. Let me talk about this for a second. First of all, I think to be a leader and to be really authentic, the first thing you have to do is do your job today well. I got pictures up here of people. I don't care whether you work at Hen House as a bagger or whether you're the CEO of a company, someone wants you to do that job well now. Stop asking about when you're going to get promoted next. Stop asking about when the damn raise comes. Do your job now. You owe it to yourself and to the people around you. And that could be in a study group, it could be the Honor Society, I don't care what it is. Do it now. Step up. Take action. No excuses. Oh, it's raining, and so it was a little slow in, and I was late, and oh, my dog ate the homework. I don't give a rip about that. Figure it out. No excuses. That's crazy. And the other one is, okay, I talked about stepping up, measuring it up, competition. I love it. I love it, I love it, I love it. If it doesn't have a scoreboard, why bother, is one of my statements. My kids roll their eyes at me. If it doesn't have a scoreboard, why bother? If you're not measuring it, you don't care enough. I was nervous as hell coming in this morning. It was pissing me off. I said, wait a minute, I've spoke to groups of 3,000 people with business owners and CEOs, and I'm nervous about speaking to 50 high school students? This is crazy! You know what? If you're nervous, it means you care. Before I run cross country and track, I threw up before the race started every time. That's when I knew I was ready. It didn't taste very good, but that's okay. I cared. If you don't care, quit. Do something else. It's not worth it. Because if you don't have the passion to do it and do it right, you need to find something else to do. It ain't going to be worth it. If you're kind of half-assed about what school you want to go to, guess what? Who knows where you're going to end up, and who knows whether you're going to do any good. It's got a scoreboard. This one is beautiful. My daughter, who's now 14, until she was 12, she got to have the bumpers at Incredible. It's automatic bumpers. They come up and they go down, so that I didn't get them. And she beat me at bowling because she'd throw the ball down there and then whack back and forth between the bumpers, and she had a really good score. And I kept saying, Madeline, that's all good. That's all good. I'm just telling you, when you're 12 and the bumpers come down, I'm going to kick your ass. The rules are going to change. I'm not going to be any untoward. I'm going to be a good winner. But I'm just telling you, we're coming here on your birthday, and I'm going to crush you. I've put up with this for 3 years, and I'm not happy. But I'm going to do it. The rules changed. I didn't cheat. She didn't cheat. She said, you know what? I'll declare you a winner. We're not. Whoa, 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 whoa. We're going. I'm telling you, we're going. Over to Incredible. And we did. And I won. I think I was magnanimous, but there's a possibility that I was a poor winner at that point, and there was a lesson there too. And then the 95.5 is fascinating to me. I gave you a 98.2. This is a 95.5. This is what I believe about any organization, and this is high school, and this is senior homes. I don't care. There's a portion of the energy of the org that's internal. And it's bad. It's gossip. It's people worried about their jobs. It's people worried about the relationship they have with you and whether the boss likes you more than me. And it's all this craziness. What you have to do as a leader is to try to make sure that that energy is minimized and the external world is where the focus is. You need people to pay attention to the outside world and what the objectives are for your org. And if you can get it to 95.5, you win. We're human. We're going to have 5% of our energy is going to be internal. Bickering, complaining, politics. Minimize that. If you're going to be a leader and you're going to influence people, get that number as low as you possibly can get it. And then the final one is change it up. Here's what I say. No matter what you're doing, change is going to be, needs to be embraced. If you're not ready to embrace change, you got trouble. I read an article in Forbes the other day, and they're publishing articles from their archives, and it was an article from 1995. Now, that's a perfect year. That's probably around the year a lot of y'all were born. It isn't that long ago. And it talks about a little company named Netscape that was formed, and the internet didn't exist. And I think about this and I'm thinking email really didn't happen and no one had a smartphone. It was the craziest thing. When I got off a plane at that time of year, I went straight for the pay phones. You know why? Because I needed to check my voicemail. And the only way to check your voicemail is to find a pay phone, call a toll-free number and check it. We didn't have mobile phones very much. It's a crazy world we live in. Change happens, embrace it, love it, deal with it. And as a leader, you better expect it. And you should be the person that tries to identify it and drive it. If you try to drive it, it's fun. Embrace it. It's a blast. Craziest thing in the world. Once again, if you're enjoying yourself, you will love it. I will guarantee it. So here's what I say. Get real leadership. I really specifically put it into 3 very distinct areas, and I've talked about those. That has to do with yourself. That's the foundation. Leadership of yourself. Who are you? What's your brand? What are your 7 words? I want you to understand that. Leadership of your people. They don't have to work for you. They can be peers. They can be teachers. I don't care who they are. Can you influence them? Yes. Can you win with them? Can you drive success with your people? The answer is yes. In the business, think of this as a group. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, this comes down to doing your job, figuring out what you're going to do to win, having a roadmap. It's fun. Drive change. Own it and deal with it. Because if that happens, what you have a chance to do is deliver wild success with Get Real Leadership. So thank you very much.